In spite of all these stories, many people believe that my stories are kind of like the stories of Santa Claus, based on a real person, but over the years have been greatly exaggerated. Perhaps I was based on a real person, but over the years, my stories and adventures have grown. I lived in England in the woods of Sherwood Forest and had many adventures and had many fun times with my band of merry men. My favorite adventures were with Little John, Maid Marian, and Will Scarlet. Little John was a massive, strong, but nice man. I met him on a narrow bridge, and both men wanted to cross first. So I challenged this man to a staff fight. We fought for over an hour. Then, all of a sudden, Little John hit me over the head with his mask. I became furious with this and swung out of anger and missed and fell into the river below. Little John was laughing, and soon I was too. I signaled my men by blowing a bugle 3 times, and when my men got there, they helped me out of the river and listened to the story, and soon were laughing too. When I asked this man's name, he introduced himself as John Little, but my men thought this was all wrong and voted to call him Little John. Little John accepted his new name and our invitation to join him, and soon join our band of merry men, and soon became my best friend. Maid Marian was a beautiful young woman who I met at the Nottingham Fair. I went to the Nottingham Fair to enter an archery contest and saw Maid Marian sitting in the stands. For me, it was love at first sight. When the time came for the archery contest, I used all my skill to win the tournament. When I won the tournament, my prize was a golden arrow presented to me by my enemy, the Sheriff of Nottingham. Why we were enemies is because the sheriff spent most of his time stealing from the poor people, and I spent most of my time stealing it back and giving it back to the poor people. At the beginning of the tournament, every winner was told by the sheriff himself to give their prizes to his daughter, even though none of the winners had any romantic interest in his unappealing daughter. When I received my golden arrow, I defended the sheriff's orders and quickly strode it over to Maid Marian's place and placed the golden arrow in her hands. After that, I saw Maid Marian as much as possible, and she helped me escape the evil plots of the sheriff to capture me as much as she could. I had many adventures with my nephew, Will Scarlet. I had not seen him in years, so did not recognize him when our paths crossed on a country road. When I saw a young man in colorful clothing, sniffing a rose and humming a tune, I thought I would have a little fun with him. When I challenged this young man to a staff fight, and I am embarrassed to tell you that this young man in colorful clothing beat me at my own game. When I asked his name, he introduced himself as Will Scarlet, and later was very surprised to find him as my nephew. Will Scarlet and Little John helped me lead my band of merry men. I lived in the Sherwood Forest many years, had many adventures, and outsmarted the sheriff many times. There are 2 stories about how I spent the final years of my life. One story said that a winter came and I became very ill with a fever. Little John took me to a church to get help from a nurse. Even though I was related to this nurse, she was deathly afraid of the sheriff of Nottingham and decided to silently kill me. She led me up to a room and slowly let me bleed to death. The other story, which I much prefer, is me in the woods of Nottingham, Sherwood Forest, and in a quiet cabin with my wife, Marion. Even though my stories may not be real, I have provided entertainment for storytellers and story listeners for over 800 years. Who am I?